On today's episode of Wangle's Workshop, I'm going to be making a Bowie knife. Now this isn't just any Bowie knife. This is the Bowie knife that I'm going to be submitting to the 2021 YouTuber Maker Challenge. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, 18 YouTube makers are all going to be making a Bowie knife. Here's the 18 makers that are going to be involved. We're all going to be uploading our videos and pictures of our Bowie knives on the same day, and it'll be up to the viewers to go and vote on who made the best Bowie knife. Now, it does require you to enter your email address to vote, but it's the only way to keep the voting legitimate and prevent from anyone, voting multiple times or fraud, things like that. So I would truly appreciate it if you took the time out of your day to go vote, whether you vote for me or somebody else. I don't really care as long as you go and vote. For sure, vote for me. So far, I cut out the Bowie knife using an angle grinder, and now I will head over to the 2x72 grinder to finish profiling the knife. The steel I'll be using for this knife is Alabama Redneck Damascus. It's a combination of 5160 and 15N20. Once I finish profiling on the belt sander, I'll get all the hard to reach places with files. Now I'll use some blue layout fluid on the edges of the knife. This will allow me to scribe my lines for the bevels and make them more visible. Now I'm back on the 2x72 grinding the bevels. This is the first time I've done such an extreme recurve, so there was a bit of a learning curve in doing this. It's not too difficult though. Once you get your bevels set around that recurve, it kind of becomes more like a flat grind. Now I need to get these scales made because I can't drill the pinholes in the knife until I know where they're going to be laid out based on these scales. So I'll start with these casings and I'll be cutting basically the top off. Please don't do anything stupid or use anything live. So I'll just have the bottom of the casings, and then what I will do is sand them down on the belt sander and glue them to a black piece of G10 before casting them in epoxy. The epoxy I'll be using for these scales is the Total Boat High Performance Epoxy. It's got a 2-to-1 ratio and it's very reliable. Once the scales are done, I will cut them and sand them to shape. It was pretty nerve-wracking working with these because if I mess them up, it'd be a whole lot of work thrown in the trash. After I get them to shape, I'm going to drill the pinholes in them, which you'll see here. I had to drill straight through the center of some of the casings, and that's why I had to do these before I drilled the holes into the knife. Now for the brass bolsters, I actually did these in the same way I did the scales, and the fact that I drilled the holes in these and then lined them up with the scales on the knife before drilling the holes into the knife. To make this part of the process easier, I basically just super glued the bolster to the knife and then used that as the guide to drill the holes in the knife and then just knocked it right off. Now, I missed the footage of drilling the holes in the knife, but here we are with it all finished. All the holes are through the knife, the bolsters, the scales, everything is lined up, so a lot of the hard parts are done at this point. So now I'll trace out and grind the bolsters flush with the knife. For the heat treatment of the knife, I will start off by doing 3 normalization cycles. After that, I'll heat the knife up just past non-magnetic, and I will let it soak at that temperature for about 10 minutes. Once it's done that 10-minute soak, I will go ahead and quench the knife and then clamp it between 2 pieces of metal. Once the quench is done, I will clamp it to some angle iron to make sure that it stays straight, and I will put it in the oven for a temper, 2 cycles of 2 hours at 400 degrees. So here we are post heat treat with the scales and the bolsters kind of sitting on the knife so you can see where we're at. It's time to sand the whole knife down and get it cleaned up. This is probably the most hand sanding that I've ever done on a knife. I started with 150 and went all the way up through 1000 grit, and I probably could have spent a lot more time on it than I even did. Now I'll clean the blade very well and then etch it in ferric chloride. This will bring out that Damascus pattern. Here you can see the Damascus pattern that was brought out. I followed that etch up with a hot coffee etch, and this is the final result of it. The lighting's not super good, so you can't see it very well here, but you'll get to see it as we move on in the video. Now it's time to glue on the scales and the bolsters, and to do this I'll be using West Systems G-Flex epoxy. Now I'll shape the scales using a file, and then I'll sand them all the way through 1000 grit, and then I will polish them using a buffing wheel. So now here are the results of that. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I just have a little bit of cleaning up around the edges to do, and then I need to sharpen the knife. To sharpen the knife, I will start with a 120 grit belt and create a bevel across the entire knife, making sure that there is an even burr all the way down the entire edge. And then I will move up to 220 grit and then 400 grit. I would go higher, but I don't have belts that go higher than that right now. After that, I finish on a honing rod and a leather strop. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, don't forget that this is a Bowie challenge video. There's 18 total makers, and all their channels and videos will be linked in the description, as well as the place where you can go vote on which Bowie you think is the best. Now please, I would truly appreciate it if you guys go check out the other videos and the other makers, and you go vote on which Bowie knife you think is the best. As always, thanks for watching.